All right, welcome into Los Angeles, California. This is Reiter's Block. I'm Bill Reiter, and we got a great show planned for you. Longtime NBA player, my colleague here at CBS Sports HQ, Raja Bell's going to be on the program. Trial by stat is over, Game of Thrones fans, and we have a winner from last night's action. And we'll celebrate some of the stars who defined their respective series, at least yesterday, starting right now.
This was James Butler. Like, that was the adult in the gym. And he was just a tremendous sort of rock. He willed us to a lot of different situations.
All right, as you can see, we're starting in the East. Call him James Butler, call him Jimmy Butler, call him whatever you want. Butler was finally the star that Philly expected in the postseason when they acquired him around the All-Star, around the trade deadline from Minneapolis. For the first time in these playoffs, Butler looked like the guy that we know he can be. We'll give you some stats here to prove it. A great offensive night, a great all-around night from Butler. 30 points last night, 4 of 10 from the three-point line, 8 of 8 on free throws, pulled down 11 rebounds. That compares to a pretty lackluster playoff performance to date, entering that game, averaging less than 11 points per game, only 2 of 11 on threes, and pulling down fewer than 4 rebounds. Butler was incredible. He was the best player on the floor, not named Kawhi Leonard, in that game, and a big part of the reason Philly notched things up. But there was a hidden message, a hidden reason, a hidden part of that domination as Embiid struggled with that stomach virus. And if you look at Philly's stats, they didn't shoot particularly well, and that was the defensive effort they put together. Philly, pretty lackluster defense over the course of the regular season. 15th in defensive rating, played like a defensive force, something Jimmy Butler at the podium after the win was sure to point out.
I always go back to defense. You know, we get stops, we're taking off into the open floor. Guys are making plays like Joe and Ben. You know, whenever we're playing like that, guarding like that, we're such a good team. We definitely have to continue to do it and know that on any given night, it's going to be somebody's night.
He's utterly right. When they play that level of defense, they're good enough certainly to make a run through this series all the way to the finals. And just to point it out, Philly's offense last night shot less than 40% from the field, only hit about 29, not even 29% of their threes, but they made Boston look absolutely pedestrian on the offensive side. The Celtics held to 36% from the field, 36%. 27% on threes. A big part of the Raptors, a big part of this was defense. I keep thinking Celtics because they play such good defense too. And that happened, that ability to shut down Toronto, despite the fact that Kawhi Leonard had a great game. He continues to remind us, and we've forgotten the drama with the injury, forcing his way out of San Antonio, the rest of times over the course of this season for the Raptors. Kawhi Leonard is a top 2 or top 3 player in the NBA when he's healthy, and he's healthy right now. But no star, ask LeBron James and the Lakers, can do it alone. You can see there, Leonard, 35 points last night, 54% from field goal percentage, hit about 30% of his threes. His 35 points, only got 54 from the rest of his teammates as a group. Kawhi aside, they shot 30% from the field. They shot 26% on threes. He was a +4 in box score plus minus. The rest of his team, a -21. This series will be dictated by a few things. One, can Philadelphia play with that level of defensive energy? And two, can Kawhi get some help? We know that Siakam's been awesome at times in this postseason. He was brutal last night, wildly inefficient, wasn't able to get it done. Don't sleep on Toronto. Don't overreact to a single game. But we did see the promise in Philly that a lot of us, myself included, didn't expect to be a consistent part of what they were going to be in the postseason. Philadelphia is talented enough to beat anybody, not named the Warriors, in a 7-game series, but they're also combustible enough to lose to anybody in a 7-game series. It's going to be interesting to see whether Philly can keep this defensive energy and whether or not Toronto's able to find some other weapons to surround Kawhi with. I think they will. I still like the Raptors. I don't want to overreact to one game. And speaking of not overreacting to one game, In Denver, the Nuggets take the series lead over Portland. They're up 1-0, and Jokic is no joke. This guy is the real deal. He's absolutely legit, and both his teammate Paul Millsap and his head coach talked about how special this young, tantalizing big man is at the game of basketball.
I consider him like a Tom Brady. You know, he's going to always pick you apart and make the right read. So
to play that kind of minutes and to play at that level is really remarkable for such a young player going through it for the first time. And all season long, you've heard me say it, but we never use fatigue as an excuse. We never use any of that. You know, we're a no-excuse team, and I think Nicole's a great example of that.
All right, so I'm just going to read you Jokic's line last night. And I know we do comparisons too often. I know we like to say everybody's the next LeBron. I'm not saying that. But in terms of a playoff performance, it does harken back to LeBron trying single-handedly to take on those Warriors teams, especially before Durant arrived in Golden State. Last night, Jokic, 37 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 blocks, and a couple steals. The guy was an absolute stud. This is one of the best players in the NBA on the rise, and there's a lot of guys who can fit those parameters. But if you can do that in the playoffs, what Jokic did last night, you have the potential to separate yourself from the rest of the pack. And just for historical comparison, players that have averaged over the course of a postseason 24 or more points, 11 or more rebounds, or 8 or more assists per game in a single playoffs in the history of the game, it's a short list. LeBron James on the list, pretty good player. The Big O on the list, pretty good player. Russell Westbrook on the list, MVP. And the Big O, again, you see Nikola Jokic right there as a part of that group. This is a special player. Jamal Murray's coming to his own. Mike Malone's an excellent coach, and Denver has a real and important home court advantage. Don't sleep on the altitude. It matters. But again, don't overreact. We talked about this on the show. I think it was yesterday. Every single team that makes a deep run, for the most part, to their first NBA championship or a player's first NBA championship, stumble along the way, get down in a series. I still like Portland in this series. I'm not going to flip the script on that. There's a few reasons, if you look at that Portland game, you think there's better things to come in terms of the outcome. First of all, just the second game this postseason where both teams shot above 50%, which means Portland's offense was really dynamic and really good again. That's the 14th game, playoff game, where Lillard has scored 30 or more points. They have a 6-8 record when that happens. 2-2, interesting, when he scores 35 or more. Jokic was 61% from the field. And here's the but stat. Sometimes you're cursed with the blessing of rolling through a series. Portland hadn't played a basketball game in 6 days, and there was a sense of inevitability against the Thunder. You could feel Oklahoma City come apart at the seams. When you don't sharpen your skill set, when there's not a whetstone there to make sure that your basketball weapon is ready to roll, you can get a little complacent. Expect Portland to be much, much better in Game 2 in Denver. I think it's going to be a hell of a series, and the Denver-San Antonio series showed us that you don't really know what to predict with this Nuggets team. This one has the chance to be a little bit of confusing as well. I love Lillard. I still think he's, after Steph and Durant, the guy that I would take above any other currently in the postseason in a single game or to make a single shot. He's that legit. His guys believe in him. Not an efficient night last night, particularly from the three-point line, but Dame's not going to go quietly into that dark offseason. Don't sleep on Portland. I think it's going to be a hell of a series. That's my take. Let's get Raja Bells. Raja played the game for a long time, an incredible competitor, one of the two guys you watch here on CBS Sports HQ in the mornings on Cannell and Bell. He's going to give us his take on that series, on the postseason, on the officiating, my conversation with Raja Bell on the NBA playoffs when we come back to Raja's Block here in just a minute. All right, welcome back into the show. You know, one of the many reasons CBS Sports HQ is awesome, because we got extra Raja Bell. You see him on Cannell and Bell in the mornings. You see him on CBS Sports HQ throughout the day. And I was lucky enough to catch up with my colleague and my friend earlier to talk a little NBA hoops. All right, Raja, thanks for making time, man. Appreciate it.
Always, brother.
All right, so Denver get the win last night. How much are you buying these guys? How far can this team go?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking better. I had my reservations early, but they seem to have kind of settled down, and the Denver that you saw through the regular season is now starting to show up in these playoff games. I wouldn't read a whole lot into game one. I think that 6 days off or 7 days off from Portland probably had some effect. They looked a little rusty. Denver looked like the sharper team. But generally speaking, what I saw on the court was Denver got easier shots out of their action, playing through Nikola Jokic and having those guards split and run DHOs. They were coming off with wide open looks, or they'd have Jokic rolling at the rim. And Portland was having to shoot some really tough shots. It was a lot of ISO situations. Damian Lillard got some relatively easy shots out of pick and roll, but everyone else had to really work for their shots. That's not a sustainable model. I would roll the dice with the team that's getting the easier, better looks with their offense than with the team that's having to go ISO and getting tough buckets.
Yeah, I like the Blazers in this series, Raja, and we tend to overreact in the moment, but Jokic has looked pretty amazing at every step of the postseason. Where do you think this guy is going to rank in the game over the next few years? Is his coach right? Do we need to start paying more attention as a fan base?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's really, really gifted with the ball in his hands, both scoring it and kind of facilitating and igniting the offense for them. They run him basically as a point center. They get off the ball early, they get it to him, and then they have all these guards crossing, and he facilitates as good as anybody in the league. I do think ultimately, though, for him to take that next step and be one of the best players and most reliable players in the NBA, he's got to work on his body a little bit. I think that there's genetics in play there, obviously, but he's got to slim down. He's holding a little bit of extra weight, and when you're talking about one of the best 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in the league, you got to be able to put a saddle on those guys, so to speak, and ride them, home. And I don't know that he's in the type of shape that he needs to be in to do that, but certainly from a skill set, he's as good as anybody out there right now.
All right, in the same category as overreactions, first game of the Toronto-Philly series, Philly was done. Second game of that series, Philly's going to win the series. If we slow it down, they're 1-1. Who do you actually like winning this thing going forward?
Well, I like Toronto going in, but you haven't seen the best of Joel Embiid. He's been, relatively pedestrian through the first 2 games for various reasons. If you're Philly and you've stolen home court advantage, you got game 2 on the road, and you haven't seen the best of Joel Embiid, man, if you're a Philly fan, you got to be feeling really, really good right now. Toronto didn't have the supporting cast show up last night. They had Siakam, they had Kyle Lowry, they had Kawhi do their thing, but then you're talking about Marc Gasol with 5 and Danny Green with 3. That's not enough bench support. Philly looks like their bench is playing better right now. So at the end of the day, I'm going to flip and probably go with Philly to win the series. Not an overreaction to the home court. I just think they've got more guys playing better. If they get Mike Scott back, he was playing great before he went out. I think they got a deeper bench probably than Toronto. And I thought Toronto had one of the better benches in the league. They just don't seem to be playing great right now.
Roger, 2 great games tonight. One of the big storylines, whether Steve Kerr likes it or not, is the officiating. And to be somewhat fair to Houston, I think 12 guys have been ejected so far this postseason by the officials. We saw James Harden complaining pretty aggressively after the game. How much do you think all that drama will affect what the officials call today in that game?
Yeah, I think the officials will come out and they will establish that verticality rule. They will make better calls in regards to that rule early in the game, clean up some of those times that you see Klay Thompson under a shooter's legs who is vertical. I think that they need to do that. I think that they will do that. But ultimately, that game is going to boil down to who plays better and who executes better. And I think Houston has to kind of take that approach. I worry that they are too concerned with the officiating, what calls they did or didn't get, who's going to be the crew chief, what happened to them in years past from a percentage of calls made against them. You can't be concerned with any of that right now. You have to be concerned with executing a game plan, having a sound one first and foremost, and then executing it against a Golden State team who's up 1-0. You probably should have got game 1 with a gimpy Steph Curry and a little banged up, Klay Thompson. You let that one slip away. The only thing you can be focused on now is getting game 2, and the refs cannot factor into the way you play the game or the way you approach it. I do think they clean it up a bit, but I'm worried that Houston is a little too concerned with it themselves.
I'm with you on that, and obviously it's the 2-star players. You were a hell of a competitor. If you're in that locker room, do you walk up to James Harden and to Chris Paul? Can someone that's in that locker room walk up and just say, look, guys, I get it, but we got to focus forget the reports from last year's Game 7 in the conference finals or that non-call. We got to focus on today. Who's the messenger for that team?
Yeah, I think for that team, it would have to probably be a guy like P.J. Tucker. Iman Shumpert has championship pedigree. He's a guy that's not afraid to kind of be confrontational. You know, there are guys in the locker room that aren't the stars, that do have the type of cachet, and they play hard and they leave it out there every night, that a star might respect their opinion. There are other guys that it's probably not their job to pipe up and say something like that. But it's a good point, Bill. Someone in that locker room, if it's not being said by Chris Paul or James Harden already, which it might be, someone else has to step up and say, hey, guys, look, we got to get focused again. We've kind of lost track. The refs got in our head a little bit. Despite all of that, we still had a really good opportunity to steal Game 1. All we have to do is come out tonight, be the best version of ourselves. We steal Game 2. We flip the series in our favor, and that's got to be the only thing we're focused on tonight. Those two names, P.J. Tucker and Iman Shumpert, would be the two guys that I think would have the cachet to do it.
Do you think Houston can do that? Can they flip the series and flip the switch and win that game tonight at Oracle?
I do. I think they were right there. I didn't think either team played great in Game 1, but I thought that Houston played worse for what you're used to seeing them do. I don't think Clint Capella really got established. Some of that credit goes to Golden State, but I think they have an opportunity, and I thought they had an opportunity in Game 1 to steal it. They were right where they wanted to be, even though it was an ugly game, down 3 with the ball. It was nip and tuck in the last minute and a half. If you're the road team, that's all you're really looking for. I think tonight plays out kind of the same way, and I could see a scenario in which Houston goes home 1-1.
All right, Celtics up 1-0 against Milwaukee. Milwaukee looked a little shell-shocked in that first game. They rolled through the first round against Detroit. Is what we saw against Boston from Milwaukee a sign of trouble to come in this series, or just getting their footing in this second round of the postseason?
Yeah, I think you saw a sharper Boston team because they had a little tougher first-round series with the game Indiana ball club. Detroit got rolled by Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee kind of came into round 2 not as laser focused as Boston was. But I do think some of the things you saw tactically employed by Boston in Game 1 are going to be hard for Milwaukee to overcome. It's hard to hide Giannis when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. His perimeter defender is all the way in the paint, essentially playing a zone. Milwaukee has to figure out how to get Giannis out of the way. If he's not going to have the ball in his hands because he's got a big, and they played Al Horford and they played Aaron Baines on him, so he wasn't able to get to the rim and bully people like he's used to doing. So it made him get off the ball and have to get it to other guys. Well, then you got to find a nice spot on the baseline and kind of a duck-in position, kind of a dunker spot where your man, if he helps, you're in an opportunistic spot to step in beneath that, catch it, and finish at the rim. Hanging out on the perimeter just provides an opportunity for them to play 5-on-4 defensively because you're not going to shoot the ball. If Milwaukee doesn't figure that type of stuff out, if they haven't been working on that over the last day and a half, it's going to be a long series for Milwaukee, and Boston will roll them relatively easily.
All right, Roger, last question for you. How do you think this plays out? Do you think Milwaukee figures it out? Do you think Budenholzer adjusts, or do you like the Celtics tonight and therefore going forward?
Yeah, so I think they're going to be better because, again, I thought they came out a little flat. So I think you'll see a better Milwaukee team tonight. I don't know if you figure that out over the course of 2 days. That's going to be, the question, whether Budenholzer and his staff and those guys are able to make that adjustment on the fly. Ultimately, I could see a scenario in which Boston wins tonight. I picked them earlier, but I do think Milwaukee plays better tonight. And if they play better and they figured that out to some degree, you could see Milwaukee hold home court. Usually the NBA, you don't go on the road and win 2 games in this round of the playoffs. I think they'll have that home court advantage. So I think Milwaukee will probably win it, but don't be surprised if Boston wins because it's a lot to ask them to figure out, on the fly for a team who hasn't played like that all year.
All right, Roger Bell, appreciate you. You're looking sharp. I got to up my morning style game. I thought, the HQ collared shirt, I thought it was enough.
I dressed up today because you were dressed up last time. My bad.
That's my bad. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for making time.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, appreciate Raja making time. That guy is so good at what he does. Such a good dude. We're gonna keep talking some NBA through a little bit different way. We're gonna do it. Yesterday, we presented a trial by stat. 4 of the most dangerous players in the NBA went head-to-head. We crown a winner when we come back to Writer's Block here in just a minute.
Hang on.
Who's that foul on? Is that on Ann?
That was on Ann, yeah.
All right, nothing like a gentle ribbing from Steve Kerr. This is all gamesmanship. This is all about trying to manage the officials. Head into that showdown tonight. Game 2, Houston against the Warriors at Oracle in the Bay in Oakland, California. We're going to go inside the numbers on tonight's game, give you some analytical perspective on each of these matchups. And we start with the number 22. This one's interesting. Despite a Game 1 win, the Warriors shot the fewest three-pointers in a playoff game, those 22, in the Steve Kerr era. That's a stunner. Expect them to correct that in this game tonight. How about 201? Kevin Durant poured in a game-high 35 points in that Game 1. In his last 5 playoff games, he has a total of 201 points, becoming just the 4th player in the last 30 years to score 200 points in a 5-game span in the postseason. The other 3, pretty good names. LeBron James, Allen Iverson, and the one and only Michael Jordan. How about 9-2 here on Inside the Numbers? Don't bet against the Rockets just yet, even though I'd like to. They are 9-2 against the spread in their last 11 games in which they score 100 points or more in the previous game. All right, we're going to move to the East and the number 26. The Milwaukee Bucks struggled down low in Game 1, scoring just 26 points in that respect. During the season, they averaged 53.4 points per game in the paint, the 3rd most in the NBA. And 21-6 is next up. The Bucks have a tendency to bounce back after losing, at least in Vegas, against the spread. They're 21-6 in their last 27 games following a straight-up loss. And finally, the number 33, the Celtics are seeking their 6th straight win to start this postseason, a feat they have not accomplished in 33 years. All right, here's the deal. I love Game of Thrones. I think it's amazing. It's the greatest TV show of all time, and we've only got 3 episodes left, Game of Thrones fans. So we're gonna honor that show and all the fallen by talking about Game of Thrones through an NBA prism. We started it last week, little trial by stat. We give you 4 contenders, and then they go after each other in that trial by stat, and we find out who the winner is. I thought it was going to be Lillard. That was my champion yesterday on the show. And by the way, so did you in the poll that we put out there. You had 4 options. Lillard, as you can see, got the most votes, but it wasn't Lillard who got it done. Let's start with the first matchup in trial by stat. 2 studs, Joel Embiid against Kawhi Leonard. In a normal situation, it would feel like a fair fight, but like with Oberyn Martell, a little bit of poison in Joel's system, had a little bit of a stomach virus, and Kawhi utterly dominated him, certainly in the points per game. Embiid, more or less a non-factor. Kawhi was the Kawhi we've come to expect, so Kawhi moves on. But we had another matchup before we get to the final trial by stat. Lillard, who's such a stud, against Jokic, who's starting to put his imprint on the game. Really close contest here. Jokic, a few more rebounds, and in the end, his team gets the win. So we advance to Kawhi versus Jokic. Both of these guys are playing at an incredible level. Both of these guys look like absolute studs. But Jokic was the guy in trial by stat whose stats actually led to a win for his team. Even though only 10% of you thought he would come out on top, he pulls off the upset, and at least for the moment, is the man sitting on the Iron NBA throne. Congratulations, Nikola Jokic. You are the man. And now, I'm putting this off because I think the lines are tough today. It's time for Bill's big bet of the day. And a little bit of a losing streak. The winning streak comes to an end. We're down to 12-9. I really want to bet on the Warriors, but I'm going to avoid the game. I hate the 5.5. The Celtics plus 7.5 looks like Vegas is begging you to take that number, which you usually don't want to do. I texted some sources in Vegas and some people around the NBA. Everybody agrees the number's too good to be true, which makes us nervous, but I just can't take the Bucks at 7.5. I'm a little worried that Brad Stevens is going to out-scheme Budenholzer. I'm going to go reluctantly Celtics plus the 7.5. That's a lot of points, but man, Milwaukee's capable of feeling the chagrin of that first loss, and they know if they lose this game, the series is probably over. And still, I'm talking myself into right now, Celtics plus 7.5. I'm going to put a medium amount. My comfort level of how much I gamble, kind of in the middle. This isn't a lock for me. I feel relatively good about it. Celtics plus 7.5. Thank you for being here and hanging out on the show. We appreciate you. Very, very cool. We've got Fred Hoiberg on the show tomorrow. We got Bubba Watson coming up in a couple days. We got some great guests for you here on Writer's Block. The guys in Fort Lauderdale taking over right now. CBS Sports HQ always has you covered, sports fans, sports gamblers, what you need and want to know. And Sportsline's going to get you covered 30 minutes from now from Stanford. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Bill Reiter. Thank you for being here.